Rain Day, what the heck do I do in Conquest? Seriously, what is this whole mode about? I don't understand. I love Arena, I love Clash, they make sense to me, but Conquest is just too difficult to understand. It's a new map, new seasons, new items, new balance changes to everything that we've known in SMITE, and it's great, it's exciting, but for a new player, it can be daunting to come into the deep end of a pool when you haven't really learned how to swim yet in the game. And before we get started, no, Conquest is not about VGS spam. You are not clearing out a PvE raid, and it's not about getting your lane ganked over and over again in the games that you're playing, although if you were watching my games, you might think that's the case. Conquest is essentially an economy. It's an economy of resources that you're slowly building up so that you can perform the ultimate purchase, which is getting that Titan down. Now, here's the idea that I want to present to you that might make it a little bit easier. In Conquest, you are starting at level 1, so a lot of other modes like Arena or Clash starts you at level 3, so it's very different in terms of what you can do at the start of a game. This means that some champions with their full kit are very strong, but with only one ability aren't nearly as strong or defensible or have as much utility as they're used to having. Coming from another MOBA like LoL or Dota, it's going to be a little bit more similar, but in terms of SMITE, a lot of the other game modes start you at level 3, and this can be difficult for some of those players. I'm so used to brain dead F1, F2, F3 whenever I start a game just to get all 3 of my abilities, but now I got to realize, okay, which one do I want? What's going to help me clear? What's going to help me in case I need to escape on this very aggressive composition I'm playing? And it does create a different dynamic you have to pay attention to. That's one of those little barriers, but it can matter when you start out with like Agnes Agnes 1 instead of his dash or his flame wave, right? Now, just like any other MOBA, it goes back to the same basics where you are taking down minions in order to get gold and experience, in order to increase your level, increase your powers through those levels, and then increase the amount of money you have to thus spend on items which also make you more powerful. The first thing to look at in Conquest and in MOBAs is what do you start with? You have a limited amount of gold. In SMITE, it's 1,500, and you can buy a variety of things. Usually you pick up a starter item and then another item, the beginning of that secondary item that you're looking to build into once you get some minions, some experience, and some gold to be able to go back to your shop and purchase the rest of it. At this stage, players make decisions like, I want to go Mage's Blessing and then go into my boots so I can move quickly and get away from ganks that might appear in my lane or aggress onto opponents if they don't have that movement speed already. Another person might say, I want to go for as much power as possible and start my stacking as early as I can on an item like Book of Thoth. So they may run Mage's Blessing and then Book of Thoth and wait to get their boots till a little bit later. The second approach requires them to play a little bit more cautiously, knowing they can't outrun most of the opponents in Conquest until they get their level 3 item, so it just changes the way that you should perceive yourself in the game and how you need to interact with other players. Now you've got your items, it's time to go out there and brawl. Team fights, come on! Actually, no, that's not true at all, and that's where the difficulty is when you're transitioning from Arena or Clash. A lot of the early game of Conquest is just about farming waves. It's about getting experience, and this is really what Conquest is all about. Have you ever heard the term snowballing? Well, it's basically where somebody gets ahead and as a result continues to get farther and farther ahead, picking up speed as a result of their already existing momentum, like a snowball rolling down a hill, getting bigger, 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 bigger until it cannot be stopped. And this takes us back to the economy that I was talking about earlier. You want to get as many items and as many levels ahead of your opponents as fast as possible, which means the more minions you clear, the more gold and XP you will get. And when a fight happens, you will be more equipped to win it, which will then allow you to most likely win that fight, get the experience and gold from taking down 1, 2, or 3 of their teammates, maybe even 5 if you get lucky, and then spend that to get even stronger and increase the disparity between your two teams. This is when people start looking at Gold Fury. This is when they start getting the Pyromancer buff, and maybe late game start looking at the Fire Giant, which allow you to get these big buffs and also a lot of experience and gold that boosts your entire team and makes it even harder for the enemy team to win a fight. Now, one big thing that I haven't talked about is in the early and the mid game. Before we get into the late game, one of the biggest words you will hear is efficiency. If you do not have an efficient plan for farming minion waves, you will fall behind. And when you fall behind significantly in levels, it almost means it is impossible or becoming more and more impossible for you to win a fight anytime soon. The disparity between a level 7 jungler versus a level 4 jungler is huge, let alone the fact that the level 7 jungler will have his ultimate and you won't. He's just going to hit so much harder and he's going to do so much more damage and be so much more survivable. And 10 times out of 10, a good player versus a good player, the level 7 jungler will win that fight, which means it's not about how good you could press your abilities, how many skill shots you can land. It's about what you've done in order to get to that level to be able to take a fight. If you are level 4, they're level 7, you need to try to avoid a fight or pick them off when they are low or not paying attention, maybe distracted with someone else who's who's been poking them down. Being efficient in clearing, being efficient in your jungle pass if you're a jungler and not having time where you're just running around trying to gank, not doing anything, always getting experience and gold should be your #1 priority. That way you can stay ahead or stay even with the enemy team. So when you do team fight, you have a chance to have a fair team fight. Now sometimes when these level disparities get so huge, a level 14 versus a level 6, people start to F6. They start to quit, they DC, they say this game is over. And that's why, in my opinion, I get really frustrated in Smite, because there is a lot of truth to what they're saying, but it's not the whole truth. You have to get that tightened down, which means late game, you still have a chance to get your levels back up, to get your items back up, but you have to play differently until you reach that stage. This is Tiny Tim with a broken leg versus John Cena in the ring. It's not gonna happen. Maybe you'll grow into it, and that's what you have to have the idea of as well. Maybe you'll be a Tiny Tim that grows into it, and in this game, you have to play that style of patiently waiting, farming safely until you're able to contribute to those fights a little bit later. So maybe one of the suggestions I'd have is to go into those engagements later. Maybe let one of your higher level teammates, if you do have a few, start those fights, get someone low, and then show up as the cleanup crew with a big ability, a big ultimate that might be able to help swing the tide back in your team's favor. And this is where skill really does come to play, because you have to execute in very small windows, but when you do, there could be a big payoff. You can get your team right back in it. Transitioning out of the early to mid game into the late game is probably the hardest thing for people who are new to Smite to be able to do effectively. If you can do that though, you will be able to just enjoy the wild, fun team fights that happen during the late game of Smite Conquest, and it's honestly one of the best experiences in any MOBA I think you can have. Now what happens when you're level 20 and you're all tied up? Or maybe you are ahead and the enemy team is still putting on a good defense. This is where you want to force a fight at an objective. The two main objectives, the Gold Fury and the Fire Giant, will be on opposite sides of the map. In my game, the left side has the Fire Giant and the Pyromancer buff, the right side has the Gold Fury. However, the objectives don't have to just be these things that you can get in the jungle. Objectives can also mean towers, they can also mean phoenixes, and you can force fights at towers as a 5-man crew if you have a lead, and force the enemy team to defend. If they want to just give that tower up, that's great, but if they defend, you might be able to get 1, 2, or 3 kills to easier then transition into the jungle for a free and a clearer Fire Giant kill than you would have had if all 5 members of their enemy team were up. However, sometimes you'll find a random pick in the jungle and you'll be able to collapse on it fast enough to turn the tide and force a 5v4 advantage in your favor. At that point, you just want to look at what can you get. Can you get Gold Fury? Ask yourself that question. Can we get a tower? Can we push a wave? What can we do with this advantage? If you ask yourself that late game, you are going to have more and more opportunities to be successful and ultimately win, because that's how you increase your snowball, that's how you increase your advantage over the enemy team, and it makes it that much more difficult for them to perform. If the enemy team has a Fire Giant buff, if they are levels ahead of you, if they are items ahead of you, then you are in a very bad spot to be able to contest, and a lot of times you do just have to back off, because the chances of you winning are pretty slim to none. A lot of new players in this situation will make the mistake of trying to fight somewhere other than near their defensive structures, and this is a bad idea. The enemy team is already well ahead of you. If you try to take a fight anywhere, they are going to win. The only way you might be able to win is if you have and utilize the pressure of a Phoenix, a tower, or even the Titan themselves to turn the tide. It's the 6th man of the year. It's the Robert Horry off the bench with a 3 to send the Lakers into the final championship game. The Phoenix pressure onto their Guardian, maybe you throw an ability, burst him down to half health, and then an ultimate comes out, keeps him there, and now they're below 30%. They have to retreat, and the enemy team is deciding, do we keep fighting? Do we run away? We're in the lead, but what do we do here? A good team will have a better answer, but an average team, your casual team that you're probably going to go against, might not have a good answer, and then may turn tail and run. Using your defensive structures as the 6th man is one of the only ways I think you can really come back in these games where a team is really ahead of you, and that's okay, but being able to be smart enough to do that and not take fights out in the open where they just have all the advantages. You're just going straight into their place, you know, blindfolded, saying, all right, man, what you got for me? And they're just like, I got everything. That is not the strategy, brother. That won't work in any CIA movie. That wouldn't work in any Tom Cruise movie. And you know, he's got special dodging bullets abilities right there. That man never gets hit with a shot in any Mission Impossible I've ever seen. Now, transitioning into the late game, whether you're winning or losing, once you get your full build, you want to take your starter item, sell that, and oftentimes replace it with a very expensive item that's going to increase your damage spike or your defensive spike, whatever it is, or your utility, depending on what role you're playing for your team. For a Guardian, maybe it's Hide of the Nemean Lion to deal with the crit that's now been bought by the late game Hunter builds. As a mage, maybe you want Chronos Pendant because you've already got enough damage and penetration and you just want some more ability cooldowns. And maybe because you've already got so much damage and crit, you want a little bit more attack speed as a Hunter, so you sell your Warrior Tabi and you switch it for Ninja Tabi. You upgrade your relics, you buy a power pot, and God forbid, maybe you even buy a ward. Here comes the most important part of the game. If you have have lasted until now, you could still lose. But the good thing is you can also still win. I'm not here teaching team fight mechanics, though I do want to talk a little bit about team fights, and I have a couple videos that I am thinking of doing about this subject in the future. If you want to check out a team fight breakdown, my man Aggro makes one on his channel, so make sure to look at those because he breaks down the best team fights that pros have, and it's really interesting to see where you should be positioning in each role. I'm going to put that in the description below if you're interested. And this is where it gets worth it, guys. This is the most fun Smite you can have. It's so entertaining, it's so interesting, there's a lot of high stakes going on, and it's the best Smite I think that's available to play. But it does take going through steps 1, 2, 3, 4, and to 1,000 in order to be able to get here. However, congratulate yourself that you're here, and now look to take a fight that you can win. Poke somebody out, put them in a bad spot. You don't have to initiate on someone who's full health. You could try to get them to half health and then decide that now it's a good time to go into my ultimate or to use that precious stun. If you find enough kills that you feel comfortable the enemy team won't be able to stand in a full team fight with you, go ahead and take an objective or take the fire giant and then siege their phoenixes and their titan. Remember, if you are full build and you do not need any more gold because you've got pots, you've got everything you need, there's no need to take the gold fury. You don't need to waste your time on a fight there unless you just want to deny that experience to a team that is already super under leveled, which can be a strategy. Once you take the titan down, that's it. Say GG's, laugh spam, and of course blame your teammates for why it lasted that long in the first place once the post-game lobby shows up. It wouldn't be a Smite game without everyone not taking any accountability for their actions. Hopefully this has given you a little bit of an inside look at to what Conquest is like and just kind of declutter the idea that it's this super complicated process. I think a lot of people just think that they can skip to the team fight stage without doing the early stages of laning, farming, getting yourself to an advantage, and knowing when to take those fights. So hopefully that helped clear a few things up. Now, just like in life, sometimes in Smite, your games don't work out. I was 0-4 to start this video, though we ended up coming back, and that's kind of the point. You could take those L's, you could take those losses, and the quicker you learn from them, the more you will turn them into wins in your future. You just got to get up one more time, then you get knocked down. And if you have anybody who's not trying to play Conquest because they're confused, just show them this video, and hopefully it'll change their mind. Yo, can we get this thing to 800 billion likes? I think it's possible, guys. We can do anything. We're powerful people. Of course, leave a like if you did enjoy it. Subscribe to stay tuned for more content here at Rainy Gaming. And as always, remember to never give up, never stop gaming, and I'll see y'all next time. I'm out.